live cast that we do. You can watch us through Facebook or YouTube. If you're on YouTube, give us a like and a subscribe on the Hex Education channel, which is the channel that we post through. So today we're going to be continuing our format where we have an ambush interviewer who's going to come on later. Today's ambush interviewer is Angel Renard. Angel is a Alexandrian priestess, and she's also a psychic and medium residing in Massachusetts. So she'll be on in just a moment. But before that, we're going to do a segment of occult news from Ellie Barnes, and then a small demonstration from Brian before we bring her on. So I'm going to pass it over to Ellie for the news.
I am excited today about my news idea, and it's kind of a big idea, and it revolves around some facts. But I want to talk about, it does, but it's a big idea. It's politics, okay? And so I want to combine my psychic vision for the things I read today about laws that are enacted in different countries, particularly countries that used to be part of the USSR, like Uzbekistan, Kurdistan, laws against witchcraft, laws against women, laws against fortune-telling and healing. I just want to say we've brought attention to it in like Africa and South America. That's been prevalent in India, prevalent and ongoing as a news item is persecution of people practicing magic or healing or divination. And so, you know, I grew up in the U.S. in the 60s and 70s where we were already really practicing our freedoms and rights and responsibilities, and tremendous amount of focus on freedom of thought, freedom of religion. And in my lifetime, I've really watched that decay and decay quickly in front of us in these last few 10 years. And so I want to bring up the idea of Project 2025, which is a set of hierarchical ideals that will be brought down into government and will be taken throughout all of the layers of administrative government, federal, state, local, that set a Christian agenda and strongly focused on Christian nationalism, where Christianity is predominant ideology and ethics, and then the way the country chooses to vote and be led. And so I just want to bring it to our attention as people who practice other types of religions and who respect and admire that people have religions and are spiritual, but that we are really interested in making sure everyone has the right and the ability to worship as they choose. So my segment is about read your state candidates, really look at the way you're voting. Mm-hmm. We may be setting seeds, not just for the economy or the environment, but we may be planting seeds that 50 years from now can put this country in two complete different directions. In fact, the globe, towards nationalism, conservatism, anti-thinking.
Everything.
Anti-everything,
right?
Yeah.
And a complete lockdown and control by a certain small conservative group. Or we could have education, good health care, good food, freedom of religion, freedom of thinking, good court systems, and spread that message throughout the globe. I think it's pretty strong right now that we're on that precipice of a divide. Mm-hmm. So my news is to task everyone who's paying attention to dig into their state and national elections and think about the long term and the freedoms that we want to keep.
Real quick, I might add, I actually just watched something that really connects to this. There's a book that just came out called The Well-Trained Wife, and My Escape from Christian Patriarchy is the subtitle, but it's written by a woman. Her first name is Tia. I feel terrible. I'm forgetting her last name. I think it sounds like legging, but you can find it if you look at the book title. And she was part of the Quiverful movement, which is the movement the Duggars were a part of. If you watched the very popular documentary Happy Shiny People about the downfall of the Duggars, if you want to get a glimpse into what this world looks like in reality, not just on paper,
right.
like how they treat women, how they treat children, how they live. I watched her give an interview on the New Evangelicals podcast, which you can find on YouTube, and I'm actually ordering the book, and it's an amazing glimpse into, we think of this as very innocuous. It's legitimately terrifying. Like the way they treat women, the way they treat children, what their plans are for how family law will be practiced in the U.S. So it's worth a look.
Yes, and it's worth a vote. So thanks for listening.
Well, we're in a place where you have two choices. You can elect America's first female president, or you can have another old self-entitled white guy.
Yeah.
Fat white guy who's crazy. Those are your choices. Make healthy choices.
Make healthy choices.
Anyway, I guess it's my turn.
It's yours, the cult demo.
So, first of all, I've got to tell you all happy Southern Decadence. So that's what's going on today here in New Orleans. If you don't know what Southern Decadence is, it's basically kind of like you took gay pride and put it on its head, and everyone in the city is letting their freak fly. So I was in the parade today with my belly dancing troupe. So
that was my other news.
Belly dancing down. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It was you. I forgot to say it.
I thought you were done.
A secret hype.
So I got a little heat exhaustion, shimmying through the French Quarter in 100 degrees heat, but I went home and had a shower and all that. So I was thinking about what I wanted my occult demonstration to be today, and of course I brought props to make it fun, but I really wanted to talk a minute about something that we don't discuss very much in witchcraft, that has been on my mind, that is a part of my formative years in relation to this religion, is we often talk about creating sacred spaces. We don't often talk about finding them, and I think that's a really important an element of witchcraft that people have forgotten. When you go and you find, that mystical brook with the waterfall and the oak tree growing out of it, and you just know there's a spirit or spirits there's something special about this place. And if you go to the old world, there are established stone circles and shrines and wells and places that they can actually go. If you live in a place that doesn't have that sort of established place, if you do your research, you'll find it. You can find Native American burial grounds. You can find, sacred mounds. The mounds are very important because they're all over the world, the burial mounds, and they have a deep significance to most cultures surrounding them. The fairy mounds of Britain, most of them were originally burial mounds, and so there was like a crossover between these dead people and the fairies or the Sidhe or whatever else that people were working with. But these sacred places could be signified by what plants or trees are growing there, by the way the water is flowing. I know in Appalachia, am I saying it right?
Appalachia.
That if you've got, I think, Levi might know this, it's something like if you have a stream flowing north to south, it's considered like magical, and they would go do their magic there. So there's signs, depending on what culture, about what these things are. But I feel like psychically, if you are a witch, you will know when you find these places. And going to those places to create a space or to leave offerings or what have you is significantly important. You find it all throughout Europe and probably other cultures as well, whether it's particular ribbons on a fairy tree or whether it's getting rid of sickness through objects at a healing well, or here in New Orleans, people leave offerings even at the house that Marie Laveau supposedly lived at, and they'll leave offerings of everything from hair bands to tobacco, whether it has magical intent or not. So I'm going to use crossroads as an example. So in witchcraft and other magical traditions, crossroads are often cited as a place where you can go to convert with fairies or the devil or Diana or Hecate or whatever iconic force that we're talking about at that time. And obviously in a city with a grid, you can find crossroads anywhere. But when you're going to the crossroads, you need to find the right crossroads. I particularly like the one at my house because I think, the whole city doesn't know it, but I do. One corner had an old historical church that's now a historical museum. One corner has a witch's covenstead and a portal pool. And then we've got a funeral home on the other corner and commerce on the next. And I just find it a very interesting crossroads. So I do leave offerings there. And I've had experiences leaving offerings. I can't work there because it's a city and cars are coming. So I have to be very, creeping out in the middle of the night kind of a thing. If you go out into the country, you might be able to find crossroads that you actually can work at. But in my first book, Initiation into Witchcraft, I give a small magical system that is from folk magic in the UK regarding crossroads. And it can very easily be put into any magical system. So you take an object that symbolizes something to you, and it can be intuitive. There are ones that are historic. And you might consecrate it in your circle, you might bless it, you might pray over it or whatever it is for a particular purpose, and then you're supposed to bury it at a crossroads. You could also leave this as an offering somewhere else, So if you're going to do this, you bury the object, and then if it comes to manifest, you should go back and leave an offering thanking for it. It's the ritual entails this. And you should be very aware of what it is you're actually working with. Like, are you working with the fairies? Are you working with a goddess? Is it the Baron? Who are you actually trying to work with and why? But I just brought some little props as ideas. So one is like for fertility, you could use an egg, right? I would suggest a real egg, not a wooden one, but that would have been very messy in my bag. So I just brought this as a symbol. But you could use a wooden one. You could carve symbols in it. You could carve runes in it. You could carve, whatever your desires are. But for fertility or something like that, that would be a good symbol. Opportunities, a key. Do keep in mind that if you are leaving offerings in natural environments, to please leave things that are safe for the environment. So I wouldn't suggest, in all things. But bearing them was usually the thing. For love, it might be a seashell, association with Aphrodite, that kind of thing, water. You might, this isn't very good, but it's just a button, right? But it's got a shield on it. So I thought, well, this would be fun for like protection or what have you. I don't know what happened to my coin. Apparently that was taken from me by the fairies, but a coin for money. I particularly like to use silver dollars if I'm going to do that. And then we've got the iron nail, which could be used for protection or to nail someone down or nail something down. So you find these objects. And you can find this in the UK, in other places where you'll go and you'll see, like, there was a healing well we went to, and it would have, like, a cast, or they just hung weird medical objects to symbolize whatever the illness was, and stones with people's names on them. There were various ways. Ribbons are a huge thing because they're biodegradable. And ribbons are good because if you get natural cloth, it's biodegradable. So it's not going to hurt the environment. If it's a natural, like a cotton or something like that, it will eventually biodegrade. Just make sure it's not filled with chemicals that are going to affect any kind of water source. So, but I do believe you should always keep in mind where you're going to be and what you're doing and what you should be using. But I think it's important for us to get out sometimes and go see where the power exists in nature. Or where it's being reverenced, and it's gonna vary greatly depending on where you live. So anyway, that's my thoughts for today.
I love that.
I love that.
I do. I love a
Me
crossword
too.
offering. So I'm about to bring on our ambush interview, Miss Angel. I do want to let you know, I see all of your wonderful comments. I see so many people joining us tonight. So we see you through Facebook, through YouTube, regardless of what you're commenting on. We get them. You can ask questions when we get to the question and answer period and the call-in period. We will be able to answer the questions that are in the comments. So I don't want you to think we're ignoring you. We're very grateful. But I'm going to bring on Angel.
He does ignore some of you.
I do sometimes, but it's okay. I can't do them all. Can't be lucky every day. Hello, Angel. Blessed be.
Hi,
Blessed
Angel.
be.
Hi, blessed be.
So good to see you. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you guys?
Doing well. I'm
Great.
dying to know, what is our topic tonight?
So that has a little bit of a disclaimer. So I was thinking for like a week, what did I want the topic to be? I knew I wanted it to be magical, but there's so many things I wanted to ask you guys individually and as a group that I've decided the topic is miscellaneous magical mayhem. So it's no topic, just magic related.
I'm down for magic.
That's innovative. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Actual praxis. Love it.
All right. Are we ready? With the current Wiccan revival happening mostly on social media, where do you see the future of traditional craft going?
And you get to pick who you want to answer first.
I'm going to go with Brian first.
Well, I mean, I don't think we're having a current Wiccan revival because I feel like that was the 90s. I could be wrong because these things ebb and flow. I think of that revival as being sort of the point where Scott Cunningham's book started becoming really popular. And because before that, it was just Gardnerians, Alexandrians, and you didn't really hear a lot about traditions in America until certain groups started, forming their own. When it hit mainstream, when you could find it in Barnes and Nobles, and I guess it would have been like on AOL mostly then, you probably had like a lot of conflicts, like we still do, but conflicts about, that's where I think the initiation war started from, because you had the initiates on AOL who were like, you're not really Wiccan, and then you had these people, I don't need to be initiated, and, meanwhile, the rest of us are like, why are we all calling ourselves Wiccan all of a sudden? Like, what's happening?
I need to talk to you about Wicca.
I need to talk to you about Wicca. When I got into the craft, from reading books and things like that, which is true of everyone, right? So Wicca wasn't really a very popular word. It wasn't being used. It was being mentioned, you know, in certain books. It was referenced, and it was always the, you know, typical explanation of this is an Old English word for witch, and usually they believed it meant wise or wise ones or something like that. And then later on, you know, the people say, oh, it's bending and twisting or whatever, you know. It means witch, you know. It's like, it means what witch means, you know. I'm like, you know, whatever that is. So I think what's going on now, actually, I think we're more in a trend with like Appalachian hoodoo folk magic, and people trying to like lift folk magic up as a tradition, which is very bizarre to me because it's not. You know, it's traditional only in the sense that there were things that were recorded by certain peoples in certain areas. You know, like we all know where a four-leaf clover comes from, right? So that probably was in Italy, you know? So in that sense, it's got traditional elements, but it's not something that is a tradition where you have initiations and teachers and things like that. But I feel like that's the trend right now. I feel like it's sort of dying down, but it's like hoodoo and Appalachia right now. And then before that, it was like Vikings, like everything was Norse.
Still pretty popular.
Yeah, and then before that, it was Celtic. You know, as far as like Wicca, I really feel like the word Wicca has really, in the last 5 years, declined greatly in usage. I see more people using the word pagan than I do Wiccan in those crowds. You know, the pagans have kind of abandoned that for the most part, I think. So unless there's some trend going on I'm not aware of, it seems like the popular phrase is witch, but it's mostly being heralded by people who just work magic, you know. So the initiates are still doing the same thing we've always done, either educating people as to the history or looking around like, why is everyone crazy? You know, and that's fine because I'm not working with them anyway. You know, so I don't think that's the trend right now, I guess is what I'm saying. And what was the initial question?
The future of traditional
Where do you
craft.
think it's headed, traditional witchcraft?
I think you're going to have the same thing you've always had with all religious traditions. You're going to have people who came into the craft and they like it how they found it, and they're going to practice craft because that's what they're doing, right? And then you're going to have people who come in, get dissatisfied, and go do their own thing. And you're going to have people who try to change it from the inside for whatever reason, right? These things will all continue. It's the nature of all religious traditions. So you're always going to have the people who are practicing it the way that it was originally intended, and you're going to have people who practice it another way. And the new people that come in, whatever that is, must be stopped. What was that?
Oh, just an ambulance or something.
Oh, okay. It sounded like something from another world trying to say something.
Beings howling in the dark behind.
Well, in any case, being pretty long-winded here, but the reality of it is, I think that because I hear a lot about this, you know, Christian will come to me, or some people will come to me and be like, they're all going to cave, they're all going to do this, they're all going to do that, and I'm like, so what? You know, the new initiate. When I came into the craft, I will always exist. When I came into the craft, I was in love with craft, and I wanted the real deal. And as I journeyed through craft, I encountered people who had made changes, had been innovative, who weren't doing it originally. I didn't want them. I didn't want them. You know, I wanted a lineage that was syncretic. I wanted the practice the way that it was intended by our elders, and that's what I would have joined. You know, and I think there will always be those seekers who are going to want that original material. It's quite canonized that it exists now. And you're going to have other people that just want to join a coven. They don't care about the material at all. You're going to have people that do this and do that. I don't think it matters. I think Maxine coined it a long time ago. There are the same amount of good new priests now as there were in the 60s and 70s. The number hasn't changed. The conversation's just gotten louder. You know, and so I think there's always going to be the tried and true craft, the inside thing. You know, I don't think, even though we do a lot of public work, I don't think it's ever going to trend. Does that make sense? Sorry, very long-winded. I don't know how to answer it.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense.
Ellie?
Ellie?
Blessed be. No, to just jump off from Brian, I'm seeing that there is not only witchcraft revival, but all kinds of topics in the occult have been studied strongly since 1888, just in the West, in English reading and writing countries. And all of the things have been looked at, and really pretty quickly. We can watch the tracks with Llewellyn's publishing for the year, Green witchcraft, astrology, Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, Viking witchcraft, Celtic witchcraft. I mean, you can watch that. Grimoire magic has been sort of more recent. Just looking at like Agrippa's 3 books was recently retranslated and published. I mean, you can follow the trends. At this point, a seeker can really review what's out there pretty quickly and find some allegiances or interests. And all the while, the British traditional witches have been being initiated and studying and practicing day after day, week after week, month after month, Sabbath after Sabbath, consistently and powerfully. And great seekers will observe that and say, hey, I think that's really solid. I think that's really solid practice and material. And I think we're going to be in great position in the future because we represent something with lineage and consistency over a long haul. That's where I think we're going.
Thank you. Blessed be.
More covens. Yes, absolutely. Blessed be.
I think we're living through an interesting time for traditional witchcraft, and we're going to see some changes. We're a relatively young religion, and a lot of the old guard are still with us. Maxine is still alive and well, and it wasn't that long ago that Raymond Buckland passed away. It's only been a few years in the grand scheme of things. We've witnessed a changeover in voices of authority in craft, and I think that's been messy, which it has to be. It's not. I don't say that to be a negative thing. I think it's normal. It's normal where the next generation steps up and speaks for Gardnerian or Alexandrian witchcraft or whatever. There are a couple of things I do think are going to happen in the future of traditional initiatory craft. One of them is you're going to see a lot more covens and initiates from countries outside of the Anglosphere.
That's already happening.
Yeah, that's already. There's a conference coming up and it's literally called the Conference of Wicca in Brazil. They use that word, which I want to get one thing out there. I'm like Brian. I don't call myself a Wiccan. I joke about it.
We don't really hate it.
No, but in other countries, it is the right word because if you speak Portuguese or Spanish and you say brujeria or bruxaria, it's not the same thing.
Right.
So in some countries, they do need the word Wicca. Like if you speak French and you say sorcellerie, it does not mean the same thing as Wicca, right? So I do notice that there are so many. I've been actually connecting to a few on Instagram. There are enormous amounts of Gardnerians and Alexandrians in Brazil, in Argentina, in lots of other places, and they're young. They're often very traditional, very devout, and
charismatic.
They're very charismatic, and I think something I notice in a lot of what they post, because I can read Portuguese. So it's like I can engage with this community a little. They're very religious, like we are.
I was going to say more Catholic.
Yeah, they use the words though, like the mysteries. They use words like the gods. I do think that we are seeing a renaissance in craft of religious witchcraft.
Yes.
Right. Like I want witchcraft to be a religious experience for me. I want to have ritual. I want to have deep ecstatic experiences. So I think that's really the heart of the future. I think that the do whatever you want, nothing matters, it's all in your head, it's all spicy psychology will always be popular. That's theosophy in a nutshell. It will always be popular, but I actually think it's waning a little bit. And I think people are leaning more into the mystical, the experienced, the religious, the gods.
Do you think that's true? Because we've talked about this quite a lot.
In tradcraft is what I mean.
Do you think that's happening in America as well? Or do you think it's just
to a lesser extent?
Yeah, I agree.
I think there is a
I'm not sure if it's happening in the UK right now. I feel like that it's not.
They hate religion in the UK. They're so anti-religious.
It's become that way,
because of the church and whatnot. But I think, you're noticing a lot of people coming into initiatory. I think the future of trad witchcraft is very religious, is what I'll say.
And it was to begin with.
Yep, I think it was
Christianity.
So I think, but what I'm fascinated by is they're young, right? These people, they're young, but they're very.
Though I do want to disappoint some of you youngsters by the fact that, Alex and Gerald have been dead for a long time, and their influence still seems to be quite pervasive.
I know. I think it's a good thing that we still have the elders. That's not a bad thing at all.
No, I've heard comments recently like the old ones are dying, and then we can change everything up. I'm like, people are never going to think you people are as important than the founders.
But I think
also Levi's not that young.
I think it's definitely a good thing though that I notice as a trend is the future of craft. I think the future of craft is like I think the future of craft, one of the biggest differences between the elders and the new generation is nobody in the new generation cares about arguing about Margaret Murray anymore.
No, because it's stupid.
It's a stupid argument.
Yeah.
We're done having it.
No.
I don't care whether this was founded in 1652 or 1952.
Right.
It's irrelevant.
Yeah, I think that's true.
It connects me to the gods, and that's what I'm going to do.
Because
And I
there
noticed
was-
that a lot.
There was an emotional journey that we had to face because a lot of people came into craft believing that it was an ancient religion,
Yes.
and then when they had their hearts broken, some of them never recovered. So when we got into it, we already kind of knew that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so we approached this knowing it wasn't some, when I was younger, I had some belief that it was, but not like those people did.
But the underground stream is there. The
Yes.
goddess worship.
Yes.
We are attaching to something that's quite old, and it just pops up, and we experience it in different cultural, apparati. But that's real. That's a connection for
I think
real
it's a
to
good thing.
ancient, but the practice today. But I agree with that. We had to
And
come
that
have
was
a
just
coming
your
of
first
age.
question.
I know, right?
Right.
It's a good question, Angel.
Thank you. Okay. Do you think, in this current political climate, with the overturn of Roe v. Wade and the teaching of Christian religion in schools, that there will be a negative impact on goddess worship in general, even in BTW?
God.
Levi.
I
She's
want
a
to.
button pusher.
It's not going to come from here. There's two things. Publicly, I do think we're going to see violations of the First Amendment. We already see them in Oklahoma, Florida. Like, that's happening right now because there is a
And
very
it's
strong
happening right under our nose.
rise of Christian fascism in this country, inspired by people like Douglas Wilson, inspired by people like who run the Quiverful movement. Like, it's a thing. And a very, very radical right-wing Catholicism that is popular with people like, the Supreme Court Justice that was elected. It's a whole thing. So that's always going to be there, and we fight that politically. In witchcraft, I'm going to say I think that a dangerous thing has happened, in my opinion, in witchcraft, where a lot of people want to get to a place where we're not talking about the goddess as much. It's not popular right now. I know that I wrote a goddess book, and it doesn't sell as well as my astrology book. It's never going to. People don't. When I teach a class on astrology, the room's full. When I teach a class on the goddess, it's like 12 people. Like, it's just not ever going to be the thing. But I think there's this funny thing that's happened in witchcraft where we assume that there's this assumption in the wider community that witchcraft is empowering to women because there's so many popular young women on TikTok and on YouTube who are witches. That's their identity. But I want you to do something for me, everybody watching. I want you to go look up paganism on Amazon, or I want you to go look up witchcraft. And you will see an enormous amount of the most successful authors, the ones that get pushed, the ones that get the publishing deals, they're men. Most of them are men. Overwhelmingly so in some cases. And some of the ones that are women are like, there's a particular writer on Amazon who's not even a real person. She's a collection of AI, basically.
I think that should be illegal.
So it's very fascinating to me that we give lip service to feminism in contemporary witchcraft spaces, but then it's still incredibly dominated, often by queer men, I find. And I say that as a queer man. I'm fully aware of what I'm saying.
You know you're queer.
I'm self-aware.
She's
but
a lady.
I actually think that we're there's this thing that happens sometimes where everybody's like, stop talking about the goddess, we're all equal now. And I'm like, okay, well, your entire coven is run by men, and all of your books are written by gay men, and everything is, there's no women anywhere. So like, that would be my litmus test, I think, for this question of like, are we going to feel this impact in witchcraft? I think we do it to ourselves. I don't think we need the Christians. I think misogyny is alive and well in the occult world and has been for a long time, and we don't need Christianity to do it. It's been there. It's one of the reasons I love craft. We have a lot of female elders. Some of my greatest teachers, with the exception of Brian, most of my greatest teachers have been women. And yeah, I think that in the wider witchcraft community, there's a veneer of feminism that hides a deep boys club. And just because it's a boys club in glitter does not mean that it's not a boys club.
Wow.
That's the big.
That's it.
Ellie?
Ellie, okay. I feel, just going back to the original question, is British traditional witchcraft affected negatively because of the rise of, continued patriarchy, right? And Christian nationalism. Yeah, I think it's rough. It's been rough. I don't think it's necessarily become easy, but it certainly felt different in the last 15 years to be a witch or pagan or reader, psychic more publicly. I felt safer, I think that's probably going to turn back down a couple of notches. Maybe for older people, we're a little bit more confident, but for young people, I think it's going to be a deterrent, and I do watch out for that. It's one of my current worries about that's the political flavor coming up, because I think it could help justify hate crimes and things like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm nervous about it. That's my answer.
Yeah.
It's such a complicated question, because we've actually sort of like milled this. I feel like Levi and myself, and now Ellie the last 2 years, we mill over some of this stuff. In these shows, we sort of learn things and think about things, right? Don't you think?
We keep talking about the questions. We do. We love them.
So, yes, there is a problem. Yes. First I have to tip my hat and say, witchcraft at its very heart, through the work of Gerald Gardner and the other elders, really did bring the station of the priestess back into Western civilization. It still exists. We are the only priesthood in Western civilization, from Western civilization, that has priestesses, that has high priestesses, and that has a goddess that is basically monotheistic, right? So that's all very important. And there are rules and operations in craft put in place by Gerald Gardner that ensure that should never go away, right? That a man needs a woman to be able to be an initiate. There's a power there. And a lot of people have a lot of things to say about Gerald Gardner, but I feel like he was really protecting women from the patriarchy as best he could with how he set that up. Mm-hmm. So I think in that sense, we look at craft and we think, marvelous. And it's a good thing we have those rules in place, because we have a lot of problematic priests, both in and outside of initiatory craft, who suffer from the disease of patriarchy still, and I'm not going to attack anyone, but it's obvious when you encounter it, right? So traditions that won't let a woman in the coven, but there's going to be a woman on the altar made of stone. We worship a goddess, but no women can be in our circle. There's something really bizarre about that. So I tip my hat to the Gardnerian Alexandrian tradition for maintaining the role of the priestess and her authority. So that's very important to me. However, in the broader world, as we've discussed earlier today, we do have a rise in this country. I'll just leave it with the United States because it's happening in other places as well. The places that's never stopped happening. We always forget that. A lot of times when we talk about these social issues, we're talking about our own social issues. Like when we talk about racism, we're centering it around American racist issues. We're not thinking about what it's like in China, right? So we have to realize there's a whole planet here. So, you go to certain countries right now and women are still slaves, and have absolutely no rights. So we're a long way off as a species from equality. We struggle with it in our own society. But right now, we do have a large majority of our population who would like this to be a Christian-dominated country. Yeah. They would absolutely love to set Donald Trump as a king, and they would absolutely love... This isn't paranoia. You can find it. It's absolutely documented. This is what they want. So if that happens, we're going to have bigger problems than chauvinistic priests.
Yeah.
So... I think it is a huge issue, and I think if women are getting persecuted, and it's only a matter of time before it's the gays, witches aren't going to be the ones that survive. If they win, our stores will be closed. And I think people don't understand that. They will find ways. They will chop away at one thing, and then the next, and the next, and the next, and the next.
We know how to go underground, though. We've had practice.
We do. It's called leaving to England. Yes.
Anyways.
King Charles, gonna kneel at his feet. And
so we're all in
agreement. Ask him to take me back.
That we're worried about that, aspect of it.
So I think there is a problem. I just think there's a bigger problem.
Agreed.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you. Blessed be. What is one thing you think separates priesthood and the craft from other magical people, as well as you can explain it within the bounds of oaths?
You pick.
Ellie.
Primarily for me, I think it's allegiance to the goddess, and that you make oaths to very specific God and goddess, and above that into the unity of, source and Godhead. And priestess or priest is the allegiance to serve those gods for really the rest of your life. It's a really big commitment. Lifer, as Brian says. And, having done it, and I'm still doing it, I recognize the weight and strength of the choice. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's a really big commitment, long term, to the gods and as they are. Sometimes that's challenging too, right? That's my answer, short answer.
Ryan?
Well, religion. I think that some magical traditions don't have a religious element the way that ours. I mean, I would argue they all sort of do. I don't think magic came.
I think you're right.
From outside of religion. Magic came from religion, right? But some traditions don't really recognize it the way that we do. I think it's that we are a priesthood and that we are, practicing theurgy. We're practicing religious magic. We are, connected to the gods are a part of what we're doing, right? So, but another aspect of witchcraft I think that is really important that's different from, other than having a goddess, that's a huge one, right? So we've got the divine feminine. We also are a religion that doesn't vilify the flesh. We don't vilify the planet. We don't vilify matter. Nature, the human body, that is all seen as sacred. We're not looking for the afterlife to be the answer to our problems. We are existing and seek to exist in beauty and harmony and, heaven is a place on earth kind of a thing. So I think particularly with traditions that do have a belief in reincarnation or something similar, the focus isn't on, well, screw all this, we're going to go to heaven anyway. It's, well, I'm coming back, so what am I going to come back to?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a very unique thing. So I'd say the divine feminine, the religious aspect, and then of course the fact that I think that's very unique because most religions are sort of anti all that, aren't they? Yeah.
I think I'm going to make it a little bit more narrow in the idea of the question being, what is the difference between the priesthood of Alexandrian and Gardnerian witchcraft and other magical practitioners? I'm going to say something that I know a lot of people won't agree with me, even initiates, and I think that's okay. We have diversity of opinion within boundaries, within craft. I think it's always a danger to start classifying religions into little buckets because religions are very complex. They bleed over boundaries. They're knit to our identity. They're knit to culture. They're knit to ethnicity and language and so many other things. However, I think one category you kind of can get to in religion is some religions have a transcendental aspect. They think that there is something that you're working toward in the work, right? An example of this is Christianity. You're working to be saved from your sin, to be reunited to God after the fall. Another religion is Buddhism, which believes that you are working towards nirvana or nibbana in Pali, through the elimination, not the elimination, but the taming of desire. Most Hindus believe in moksha, liberation from the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. But then you also have a lot of religious traditions that are not transcendental. They don't really care about any concept of transcendence. They care about the community, the tribe, the people, the earth, the agriculture and what we're doing. I don't think there's anything wrong with either category, but I would argue, and again, I know a lot of initiates wouldn't agree with me, I would argue craft, as it is practiced in Alexandrian and Gardnerian contexts, is transcendental. It's an initiatory mystery religion that does believe that our initiations bring you into the family of the gods, make you a vessel for the gods on earth, teach you the great work.
When it takes.
When it takes, absolutely. It doesn't take for everyone, but... And the thing that I've always went back to, even in my darkest moments when I get sort of antsy about, oh my God, what do I really think, about the great work, I think about one of my favorite things from the ancient world, which are the Orphic burial tablets. They're beautiful. And there's an incredible book by Sarah Ellis Johnston. You can read about them. But Text from the Afterlife, I think is what it's called. But they were amulets that initiates of the Orphic mysteries would wear. And they say things like passwords to get you past the river of Lethe so you could drink from the waters of memory instead of the waters of forgetfulness and whatnot. And the famous one that everybody knows is, I am a child of the earth and the starry sky, right? But one of the things that's repeated...
I don't think everyone knows that.
But if you follow it, that's like the common one, right? But the one
you all know.
The one I love the most is the one where you're supposed to be taken before Persephone. Like you tell the guards you're an initiate, and you're taken before Persephone, queen of the underworld, and you say to her, I too belong to your blessed family. right? Like, I'm one of you. That's what it is, right? So what separates the work we do in initiatory craft from like just magic, although magic is incredibly important to us, is I really do believe that we are coming into a special relationship with the divine, and that will carry throughout lifetimes on a cosmic scale. So I do think that we do carry the seeds of, and yes, it comes from theosophy and it comes from Rosicrucian thought and blah, blah, blah. I know where it comes from. I don't care. I do believe that we are engaging in the great work in a way that makes us not salvific, like Christians necessarily. We're not looking to be forgiven from sins and stuff like that. But the great work matters to us in a way that I don't think it matters to somebody who practices witchcraft solely as a secular practice of trying to, put the will into the world. So that's the difference to me.
And I was thinking too that we are the children and the gods are our genetic parents.
Now things are
celestial, maybe. I wouldn't say genetic.
Well, celestial, but there's a big deep relationship there that I felt from you about
No, that's a common
how
thing.
we connect to the
gods.
Even with the cult of Isis.
Yes.
And we're talking about like the Roman Greco, that cult. There was a belief that you all went to the underworld, but if you were an initiate of Isis, you got to live at her palace with her. Basically, you got to live in her kingdom in the underworld.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was just, it was their form of salvation. And I'm not saying we don't have that in craft. I just think when I was thinking about unique things, we
don't root it in sin is what I got from you.
Yes.
I think that's absolutely true. We love the flesh.
Yes, I mean,
Yes.
it's the car we're driving right now.
This is the Garden
We're not
of Eden.
Gnostics.
We're living in the Garden of Eden. We're
not
responsible
Gnostics.
for it.
We don't think that our bodies are prisons.
No.
No.
I think
They're gifts.
exactly. I think that the divinity is always experiencing itself, and so bodies are wonderful because it's how the divinity is experiencing itself, right? So I think that's what separates us. And I think Brian's correct too. We are able to do that in such a special way because we don't root it in a hatred of the physical. Mm-hmm. We're not all Kether, no Malkuth, right? No. We're the whole tree.
Whole tree.
The whole tree.
And earth is part of the goddess.
Exactly.
We love her. We love ourselves.
Tree and turn it into a circle.
Yep. Mm-hmm. A tree in every Sephira.
That was really beautiful. Thank you.
It's been great questions. They've really inspired a lot of good dialogue.
Great.
Yes. So, all three of you being Alexandrian High Priesthood, but also currently or at one point you were all psychic readers. How do your personal beliefs tie in with the messages you receive from different forms of divination?
Ooh.
I'm not quite.
Brian.
I kind of got that, but could you repeat it one more time?
I love this. Okay.
Yes, of course. All three of you are Alexandrian High Priests, but you all are, or at one point, psychic readers. How does your personal beliefs tie in with the messages you receive with divination, or do they tie in with the messages that you receive from divination?
Well, I mean, you don't have to be a witch to be psychic, So I think that when I was reading for people, I was very rarely thinking about craft because I'm honing into their problems. I mean, I'm always a priest, but I'd say 90% of the people coming to me didn't really care about that. They wanted to know about Fred, the married man, that they have been stalking for 10 years, I certainly, my training in craft probably helped with the work, of course. But I pretty much stuck to tarot cards most of the time. But as you know, as a reader, a lot of times you just psychic stuff. And sometimes the cards are props. Sometimes you're really reading the cards, and sometimes things come to you, or something comes out in a conversation, and sometimes you're just listening, and it just depends on the client, what they really want. But I certainly was using psychic skills to pinpoint things that had happened to them and how I thought things might play out. So it just depends, because sometimes it's for entertainment purposes, and sometimes it's for crisis. And sometimes it's because they've been stalking Fred for 10 years and still haven't figured out that he's not leaving his wife.
Still asking about
So, does he still think about me? So I never thought of them as fully overlapping. Though occasionally I would have a client where craft would matter. It might be someone interested in craft. They come for an initiatory reading. Or something comes up and they really need help with something. So it did happen, but I think it was just always based on the client's needs. I didn't go into work thinking, this is me being a priest, because sometimes it wasn't. Even though I always am one. I don't know if I'm answering that good.
No.
But that's my answer.
That's a good valid answer.
It's very situational.
No, I agree with that. Thank you. Levi?
Okay. I do think that divination is something that is practiced and cared about in craft. There are certain points in the year where it's stressed more than others. There are certain rituals where I think it comes up more often than others. I think that there's two ways to approach this. The strict level of what we call divination and psychism right now, where it's tarot cards or astrology, runes are really popular right now. That's a learned skill in many ways that I think, like Brian, I'm in agreement with. That's really not something that's bound to witchcraft. I do think that there's so many layers to this. So like at that level, Angel, I think there's no connection. I agree with Brian entirely. Like, be a tarot reader, be a rune reader. It doesn't really matter if you're a witch or not. They're disconnected. If you're talking about a natural intuition where your will is something that understands other people, that's something I've seen in all successful witches. I've never met an initiate who's really doing the work who doesn't have that ability. Lois Bourne talks about this actually in her autobiography a lot, about how she could smell it on people. And
Witch Among Us.
Yeah, Witch Among Us. Like, that's the thing, right? And so I think that's true. I've never met an initiate who couldn't read a room, understand a situation a little, because you're doing so much mental training in our hermetic training that like you pick it up naturally. I think the highest level...
We have been Jesuits. We don't hope, we plan.
We plan, right? It's like we know we're going to bring the Kwisatz Haderach and destroy the universe. But I think that there's an even higher level where I do think that there are opportunities through our ecstatic... I do think we're an ecstatic religion, and I think it happens a lot to initiates that they receive what I consider, and this is where I get a little like, everybody's like, oh, you're treading the line of psychosis here. I do think that we get messages from the gods as initiates. And I think that part of our experience is to learn how to interpret and live within that. I think it can happen through dreams. I think it can happen through omens. I think it can happen through ritual. So I absolutely think there is a higher form of psychism that is similar to like the oracles of the classical world, where a divinity is present.
And we can start screaming, she wants me to talk to you about Wicca.
About Wicca. But I also think that initiates sometimes, it's up to the individual initiate. I have students who are really into divination and good at it. I have students who don't really care about it that much. It's not a necessary thing for witchcraft, but I will say I think an intuitive mind is something that grows with initiates, regardless of whether they like it or not.
No doubt that the psychic powers are going to be increased. I'm going to come at it from a slightly different point of view. I was always psychic and a visual and auditory psychic and a medium and kind of a downloader. Long before I understood things in the occult or even knew anything about the religion of witchcraft. And so that the psychic work came long before the religion of witchcraft. But I did determine on my own that I thought reincarnation was true, that the soul was real, that there was some divine energy and system.
And that she was the offspring of the primordial goddess.
There was some system to the universe, and that humans had agency to work on themselves. I always thought that as a young child. So as I developed interest in philosophy, comparative religion, and occult studies, I took those things a little bit further in my psychic work and would include ideas that I might be talking to someone about multiple lifetimes, or their magical or psychic abilities, other kind of subjects. But the thing I want to really stress here is that when I became initiated and became a priestess and then later a high priestess, it took my psychic work to a whole new level of service, healing, listening, elevating the client. It's way more now than it was just like, yeah, the guy's going to call you on Wednesday and no, he kind of dates this other girl too, or you're not going to get the raise. It's just going to be peanuts. I can do that. I can do that stuff all day long. But the deeper work, the priesthood work has really changed for me. And I think that it's flavored my psychic work, and my psychic work has flavored my priesthood a lot. Yeah.
Well,
and I expect it to keep going that way. I'm excited about it.
I have to admit, I am skilled at divination, but I'm not skilled at liking people or caring about their problems. So that's probably
Does
why...
make kind of necessary for the work.
Probably is why I didn't stick to that career path. But so
I love this answer. I'm good at it. I just don't care about people. So what's the point?
So yes, it's kind of true. So I think Ellie gets more invested
Well,
and
my
is better
service.
at. Yeah,
It's part of my service.
I
Yeah.
was.
Ellie's very
I
gifted.
wasn't.
Yeah.
I don't think it was my calling. Let's just put it
Ellie,
that
you're
way.
very gifted at making the person in front of you
Yes.
feel heard, though.
Yes.
And really helped and seen. No, I believe in that,
I'm
and it
not
is
good
my
at that
service, and both. My initiation
I
and
think
my
you were
witchcraft has
good,
helped me
you
so
just-
much.
Do you remember what you
Busy,
used to
yeah.
call me the prophet of doom? Because I couldn't do a regular reading where they would be like, "But
prophet of doom, spoken."
exactly, like, because they'd be like, "Will he call me back?" And I'll be like, "Have you thought about moving away and like giving all of this up and like becoming a nun?" Like, it's like I just took it to such a weird place where I was like, "This whole reading is about how this person doesn't love you, and this is a repeated pattern, and you need to blow up your life and make some changes." People, fun fact, don't want to hear that
No.
when they're on vacation.
No.
So yeah, sometimes that could be my hang up is like I just couldn't.
He was always right, though. Damn it.
Well, I did have the experience that some clients would appreciate brutal honesty, but you're always, if you get an overweight Karen in your seat, she's liable to write a review about it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I was always careful.
Be careful.
I was never rude. I also wanted to say, I see your comment, Charles, about not answering in the comments. We do that after the interview.
Ellie told me no one loves
after the interview is when we do
She's
like
horrible.
questions. So, Angel, what was your next question?
Those were such good answers. Also, Levi, I do tend to be a little doomy, gloomy with my reading sometimes too. But
Death by fire.
what was the next one?
Remember, Ellie? Death by fire.
Fire.
If you have one warning for someone thinking about possibly joining a priesthood, what would it be? Levi?
Which priesthood?
Oh yeah.
Any priesthood, traditional craft priesthood.
Okay. What would my warning be?
I know my answer.
If you cannot work with other people at all in any capacity, you will fail in this religion. A lot of people who are interested in magic and the occult are incredibly self-centered, and they have a very hard time working with groups. The amount of people, it's always a red flag to me. It's kind of like when you go to a job interview, you own a business. Would you hire somebody who spent the entire interview talking shit about every boss they'd ever have?
No, that's a red flag.
That's a red flag. It's a red flag to me when somebody comes for initiation and they're like, "Well, I've tried 6 other groups and they were all terrible." Okay. If you smell something bad everywhere you walk, you should probably check the bottom of your shoes. So that's something that I really firmly believe. If you cannot work with people, this is not the religion for you. Like if you cannot work collectively, this will not work for you. Go be a magician.
Some of them should.
Ellie?
Okay. I felt instinctively my answer was, if you are interested in priesthood and initiation in any formal religion, and you think you have this image, this beautiful image of what it's going to be like, and what you're going to gain, and how glorious you're going to be, and your hair is going to glow from the background, all that will be true. But also, your life will be turned upside down in ways you can't even imagine, and everything will be different and changing energetically, powerfully, inside your body, outside, around you, and may continue to keep doing that. And it's really, you can't describe it. So people who are going, my biggest recommendation is to really think, how stable are you? How well are you mentally and physically? And can you weather some really big internal and external changes over a few years? You need to be able to say yes to those questions. That's my scary answer.
I think just in a fun way, I'd have to say, don't do it, run.
It's true.
Right.
It's so true.
Don't do it, run. You'd have to be
terrifying.
completely insane to get initiated. You should just go to Kmart instead. Are there Kmarts anymore? I don't know.
I
No.
don't think so. Maybe.
Target.
I'm
Let's go to
not sure.
Target. Let's elevate.
Whatever.
Alexandrians want to
Go
go.
shopping.
Alexandrians go to Target,
Go
is
to
what
the
Ellie
mall,
says.
go become an Episcopalian. I don't think initiation is something that you should ever advise anyone to do, and they should always be warned, because they're asking for divine transformation without any specification of what that will be.
Individual for each person.
So what are you getting turned into, and how? hello, gods, change me into a magical creature of your own device. I just don't think people know what they're asking for. I don't think any of us knew what we're all quite unwell, probably. So we did it. We asked without knowing what was going to happen.
Look at us now. Look at us now.
My training told
fabulous.
me to always warn people from doing it.
We're fabulous.
So.
I see a lot of initiates who are not totally what a regular secular person would consider sane.
I am like one of the rare exceptions, really, honestly.
You think you're sane?
I am sane compared to the rest of you, particularly.
Hit or miss.
Yeah.
I 100% agree.
Us too. Levi and Ellie.
No,
We're like ultra sane.
Oh, honey, are you kidding? I'm not even I couldn't pass a test. Thank God.
He's 2 clicks from being in that field saying, I did it all for her.
I did it all for her, for the great mother.
I'm pretty sure you talk to plants, and they talk back.
I know, but that's nothing to do with sanity. I am totally sane.
There's a couple psychiatrists.
Can everyone
who would
vote
disagree
in?
with you.
Everybody watching and everywhere, anytime, click in and say, no, we think Ellie's sane.
We think Ellie's the picture of sanity.
Yes, we're all a bit touched, as my grandma would say.
They
are touched in the head. Yeah.
We're passionate.
What's your next question, Miss Angel?
I love that question.
Sorry, I was my next question. So the 3 of you are considered leaders in the craft.
By who?
How would you like to?
Who said that?
Well, you.
We lead covens.
You created a platform.
I see.
You 3 created a platform. You're talking to people about traditional craft. So I've decided you're leaders in the craft. And how would you like to be remembered when the new guard comes in and you guys are the old guard and elders in the craft?
There will be no new guard. We are living forever. We are not aging. We are stunning.
Okay, Ellie.
No. Is that your real answer? It
Yes,
can't be.
hell yes,
I'm
it's
going
my
to
real
have
answer.
all the lives of the children in Salem.
Wow.
The Eternal Empire.
It was very long.
Here's my answer. I have beautiful, beautiful people, young people, old people, joining the group, idea, egregore, doing fabulous work for the goddess, enriching and devoting themselves to traditional witchcraft. Yes, we're going to be in the same boat together, gently rowing from one shore to the next, and I will be at the helm as long as I can, and I will be handing the reins over to people who've also been in the boat with me quite some time. I want to be here and stay to really continue to add to it. And the young people coming in, it's not just young. Sometimes it's older people who all of a sudden wake up and say, no, I think I want to do this really big, real thing in my magical life. I'm here for you guys, too. It's not just young. It's new and dedicated hearts. And I'm excited about staying young forever and being in leadership from now on.
God.
Yes, no, I meant just new as in new initiates, and I meant like years and years out, not like tomorrow.
They can continue to sit at my feet, and I will pet their heads with great glee.
Okay. Brian?
This coven doesn't need a new supreme, it needs a new rug.
I have that as a button.
Doesn't you really?
This coven doesn't need a new supreme. It needs a new rug.
I'm going to say the same thing my teacher said. I hope my students remember me when I've departed from this world as having been a good teacher. I hope the craft remembers me as a table tipper in front of the temple.
Wow.
Fair. I have 2 answers, a somewhat facetious one and a serious one. My somewhat facetious one is I hope that when I'm dead and gone, people say, my God, he really believed that shit, didn't he? That's what I want. I want to be remembered as somebody, this is not a feint. This is not a cosplay. This is not theatrical.
You already know you're going to be
It's
remembered
devotion.
as like some sort of weird occult genius that went insane in the end.
God help us.
No,
I
he's
hope
going to
so.
be real. They're going to say real. They're going to say real about Ellie and Brian.
It's like, I really hope people associate me with devotion. But in a more serious way, I hope there is more than one, but at least one high priest or high priestess who is my downline, who is actively running a coven, and who was given everything they needed to do that successfully from me. And I did not hold my power over them in any way, and I actually set them free. Because I'll brag on Brian, that was my experience.
Sorry, I wasn't listening.
What a beautiful message,
That
Levi.
was
What
my
a beautiful
experience.
message.
Did you say something nice about
I
me?
did.
Oh,
I did.
I missed it.
You
It's
know,
true.
and so I hope that one day there is a high priest or high
What did you
priestess.
say?
I said I hope one day there's a high priest or high priestess who has everything they need to successfully run a coven and who was set free meaningfully and purposefully by their teacher, and that I did not hold power over them. I didn't try to rule their life. I didn't act like I was better than them.
I do sometimes Italian grandmother you.
But never controlling. You are very, very... That's an Alexandrian
Maybe
thing, I
guilt
think.
trips. There might be some
In
guilt
our line in particular...
You never call me anymore.
But I think you would agree that in our line in particular, we have a deep appreciation and love for autonomy
Well, we
and
have-
empowering people.
We have methods of operation that if you follow them work and ensure that new coven can get off to a healthy start.
Yep.
You know, and so, yeah, there's no governance, you know.
Support.
We want you to
Support,
succeed.
yeah.
Oh my God.
Yes, that's what I...
We
that's the
want
thing.
that more than anything.
And I hope I have a student one day in a position of authority who believes that, who believe with all their heart that I wanted them
I
to
hope
be
you have
successful.
students.
Yeah. But, you know, if I
That's
even
what
allow
I'm saying. We
one...
can't quit working, Levi. We have to do this forever. You too, Brian.
I mean, I'm going to be doing it for
Right.
every
Right.
lifetime.
So-
But this current incarnation won't make it. But yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you. That was all really beautiful. And then my last question. What is, to you, the biggest misconception of traditional craft, and how would you rather it be perceived by the general public? Brian.
The biggest misperception. I think, you know, coming off the top of my head, I think the biggest misperception is that it doesn't exist. You know, I think one of the reasons why this show, we started doing this show, the reason I've written a couple of books, the reason why we do public work is because most people encountering verbiage about witchcraft don't even know who Gerald Gardner is. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's not that we think they need to, but we are lighting a beacon for those who do, for those who want to come home again. You know, and if we don't show them that we exist, you know, I think the other misconception is that people think they know more about it than they do. Oof. You know,
Preach.
you've got people saying what Gardner believes or this person believes, and there's nobody alive today except Patricia Crowther who knew Gardner, which means she could have an opinion. An opinion about what he thinks, other than what he wrote down. She didn't really write a lot down, if you think about it. His books didn't really explain his personal views on a lot, you know. So we've got inside information, but we've got priesthood who make things up. I get that, but the reality of it is people who aren't even initiates and haven't even read his books and what have you, they will say, "Oh, he was a pervert," or you know, he was homophobic. You know, I have a very strong belief that Gerald Gardner was not thinking about gay people. Like, I'm sure it crossed his mind at some point. Who knows? Maybe he was bisexual for all I know, you know. But it wasn't something he was really thinking about. And you'll have people who say it came up or this or that. And maybe I wasn't there. But I just don't think it was really on his... I think Gerald Gardner was thinking about the goddess, and I think he was thinking about bringing priestesses back, you know, and maybe wanting to cuddle with them. I think those things were all probably true. But I think he loved witchcraft, and he was really... It had a divine kiss to it, or it wouldn't be manifesting the way that it is. So I'm going on a tangent now. But heat stroke and a little bit of wine later, you know.
It'll do that.
I just think that people think they know more than they do.
100%.
And I also think a lot of people just don't even know it exists. So that'd be my idea about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Blessed be. Levi?
I think the biggest misconception about initiatory craft is that it is a easy, hokey, kind of watered down, non-serious, non-religious, non-potent magical practice, as compared to other things that have been held up as elite examples of magic, such as the OTO or grimoire, you know, traditions, or initiatory ATRs and things
Throwing
like
a
that.
chicken foot at someone.
You know, I think there is a belief that Wicca, you know, because I know Brian's on a crusade against the word Wicca, and I agree with him entirely.
I think that's grandly misunderstood. So
I agree with you, though.
I'm not on a crusade against the word Wicca. I'm on a crusade for the word witch.
Yes, I use the word
And that
witch.
is the difference.
But my point being, they call us Wiccans
Sure.
outside of us, right? And so the perception, because the question's about misconceptions, right? The misconception about what they see as Wicca is, I agree with Brian entirely, they have no idea what goes on in our circles. You know, I've done ceremonial
They
magic
wouldn't be messing with us
alone
every day.
and with other people. And it's not nearly as she and special as it pretends to be. You know, I think that there is a huge misconception about what it is like to be in an initiatory coven, how much training is involved, what the rituals are actually like, how ecstatic they get, how much theurgy goes on, how much magical thinking goes on into the construction of a circle. Like, I do not think outsiders understand that.
Huge energy control
You know,
and
there
movement.
is a huge amount of people who talk about our religion as a stepping stone for their real practice. Oh, I was a Wiccan when I was a teenager. or
They're
whatever.
talking about Scott Cunningham.
Yes, they are. But in a lot of people's
In
minds,
their minds, they think that's the same thing.
but
Yeah.
exactly, in their minds, it's the same thing. We just sometimes take our clothes off, or maybe we use a scourge, or maybe we don't. They don't know, but they think it's in the grand scheme the same thing, except we can trace ourselves, and the Cunningham people can't. So outside of our world, people see us as the same, right? It's all the same. It's all neo-pagan Wicca, right? You know. And I think that they have a deep misunderstanding of what the experience of this religion is actually like. And I think that that is something I'm happy to see is turning a little bit with it, on social media and with younger initiates. I see a passion and a hunger and an appreciation for the beauty of our rituals, because I want to brag on our religion. A well done witchcraft circle is just a beautiful ritual. I mean, it just is. Gerald and Doreen and the early elders, and Alex and Maxine and the changes they made. They were good ritualists,
They were.
people. Like,
Powerful, beautiful
what they
stuff.
did on screen for TV shows or whatever is not the same thing as what we do in our temples, and it's just really beautiful and powerful. And outsiders, I think, don't know that.
Yeah.
But you also came
True.
from a trained line. I remember hearing, without giving anything away, with Margaret Adler, I could tell she wasn't trained because she talked about the rituals in the Book of Shadows and how badly put together they were, which meant she didn't know how to put them together because they're not really put together in the book.
No, they're not. They're oral. You have to have a lot of oral
So she
training.
was just reading it and trying to piece these. Of course, it's good to be bad, So we were given an opportunity most people don't have.
I'm very grateful
So
for
I'm just
it.
saying, some Wiccans might not be good ritualists. I don't know.
Here's my answer. I want to say what's a misconception about British traditional witchcraft. Because of my age, I graduated high school in 1982. I read about witchcraft and the occult in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s pretty solidly. I mean, I could do interlibrary loan. I did that. I went to bookstores. I traveled pretty widely with my mom doing art shows, so I went to bookstores in bigger cities and knew what I was looking for. So my take on it was that British traditional witchcraft was Gardnerian and Alexandrian covens, and it was limited and more in Europe and was going to be a rarity in my life, and I probably wouldn't be able to run into it, although I thought it was older and more legitimate. The other choices were traditional witchcraft of the Robert Cochrane lineage and descending of all that ideas, because I don't think there's their lineage is broken, but that idea that it's maybe more folk
Inspired
or England
by.
inspired by, or eclectic Wicca, meaning American, or various pagan ideas pulled together into a Wicca tradition, or Dianic and female Wicca, which was really strong in the 80s. Those were the choices I looked at, that I read about, and were in the common parlance. And I remember thinking, even in the middle 80s, I thought, well, I'll never see a real Gardnerian or Alexandrian coven. It wouldn't be possible, but I'd love to see or do that. And then the rest of it I kind of just dealt with as I made up my own things. I read and studied a lot of occult stuff and kind of continued to do my own personal witchcraft with the gods outside, because I couldn't find anything better. And I tried different things, and I just didn't find anything better until I found an Alexandrian coven. And I'm still thankful to this day that I finally got a fabulous opportunity with a British traditional witchcraft tradition. So don't think it's not out there. We're growing. There's more covens. There's more interest. That's why it's so important, why I want to be on Covendom and talk about it and represent it. I don't want it to get huge because it's really special, but I'd love for it to be an opportunity for younger seekers or new seekers who are really serious about it. It's a great system.
So we're at that time where we can start taking calls The number is 309-463-3377. That's 309 Goddess.
Blonde bombshells are waiting.
Now, I'm going to ask Angela a question while we're waiting to see if any of you brave people call in. Angel,
I'm ready for it.
you were previously, and this just was inspired by Ellie's comments, so you were previously in a Gardnerian coven. And obviously I'm not going to ask you to give away any details, but I'm curious, now that you're Alexandrian, me and Levi were discussing the differences between ritual praxis or skill, and I'm suggesting that we came from a very skilled line that way. I'm just curious, was their ritual good?
Their ritual was very good. Their training was not. Does that make sense?
That's fair. So you had some potency.
I don't know what to say to that. What do you think about the differences now, though, as far as what you think the misperception is, the question you just asked?
What I think the biggest misconceptions are with traditional craft is that anybody can do it. All you have to do is just ask, and that's it. You're a traditional witch. I've had people come to the store and they're like, yeah, no, I read about Alexandrian and I really feel that that's me. So that's what I am. And that there's no initiation required.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I've encountered that. I've had people tell me they're Alexandrian.
We do have a caller.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, you're on Covendom.
Hi, this is Rose. Can I take your call, please?
Ha ha ha! Blessed be everyone.
Blessed be.
So my question kind of branches off of angels a little bit, versus where it's like, what would probably be the biggest misconception about not just initiatory craft, but specifically being either in a working coven or as high priesthood in working in a coven.
Misconceptions.
So what is the misconception about being in a coven and being a high priest? I sort of got lost on that.
So what do you think would be the biggest misconception for the public thinking what a high priest is working in a coven
I got you.
versus
Something else.
Yeah, like the misconceptions about high priest.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about Gardnerian and Alexandrian craft, I'd like to say the answer is that we're servants of the circle. I'd like to say that's the answer. That should be the answer. And I'm going to leave it there. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Angel, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions that you hear as from outsiders about the idea of having a high priesthood?
That there's just leaders and it's very almost a monarchy, that we have a high priest and a high priestess and we have to listen to them in the absolute, or else that's it. And that's what I feel like outsiders believe, that there's the high priesthood and then there's the priest and we just slave away and worship for them and hope that they smile at us kindly.
Ellie, what do you think?
Blessed be.
Well, there's a lot with that question too, and I can't go into the minds of all the spectators because they all really have their opinions about
Are you trying to?
priests. And yes, I'm
I
always
can't
out
go
there
into
into
the
the minds of
minds
the
of all the
spectators. Priesthood in general, I think there's this dichotomy between are we trying to exercise control over people and make them do what we want and worship us and we rule, or are we actual servants to the circle and the gods and serving in the best way we can? So I think the misconception is personally better priesthood are going to download or be receptive to spirit and the gods to ask them in service, what do we do? How do we express it forward? And then the not really valid priesthood are going to be always sort of exercising their will and their ego. And I think good people can spot the difference and know, quality when they see it. But watch for a little while too. Watch your priesthood and see how they're really living their lives day in and day out. But it's definitely extra pressure. It's extra pressure, isn't it, to be watched in a little bit different way. But I think it's good to think about us and watch and take your time observing us, right?
I think this question is complex because of one very particular thing. There is a difference that I won't go into. I'm not going to get into here, but there's a difference between how high priesthood is viewed in the Gardnerian tradition, particularly in American Gardnerian tradition, covens, versus Alexandrian tradition, in my opinion. Maxine stresses so intensely in her training, and she's said this publicly multiple times, we're all witches in the circle, right? Alexandrians put an enormous amount of honor behind, in my opinion, behind the idea that even a first degree can do incredible things in a circle. Like, we do not stress the hierarchical nature. It is public knowledge at this point that most Alexandrians who are trained from Maxine give the second and third at the same time. That has been publicly stated by Maxine and by many other high priesthood. The Gardnerians don't. Also, that's public knowledge. I think that does create a difference. So it's hard. I can't answer for all of British traditional witchcraft because I'm an Alexandrian, not a Gardnerian. What do you think the general
public's perception is?
I think the general public's perception is that we're tyrants, and that any
they all think I'm nice.
No, they don't. That any coven that has anyone who has the title high priest or high priesthood is a bad place because hierarchy is always bad, and I just don't agree with that. I mean, I think if you want to be taught, you're going to look for a teacher. So, but yeah, I think there is a perception that to have high priesthood is controlling.
I've said this publicly before, and I think it's an important distinction. We're not saying we don't have a hierarchy, because we do. I think the good ones tend to rule with a velvet sword, because we're there to teach people who have the same vocation that we do and guide them into developing themselves. That's our goal. That's certainly my goal. So even criticisms or things that I might have are always in the mind of trying to develop. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But we're not a free-for-all. So there is a deference given to our elders. There's a deference given to high priesthood in a way that's culturally honoring from our culture, because I think that's the thing people don't realize is that initiatory craft does have a culture, and then of course there's subsets of that, different lines, Gardnerian, Alexandrian, things like that have variations as to what that might entail. So we're not a free-for-all, because I once had someone, because we'll say things like, it's quite well aware that we're not as controlling as the Gardnerians. We're not as secretive, and we're not as controlling. This does not mean that we're not secretive, and this does not mean that we're not controlling, right? So there is an element there of authority that does happen in the circle. So discipline and all that sort of thing. But I do think we try to focus more on the training and absolutely practicing of witchcraft. It's not a spectator sport. Every witch in our circles is working. And that's probably true with some Gardnerian covens.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
And there's probably Alexandrian covens that aren't doing that, because some of them chase Gardnerian tail and, they try to be more Gardnerian. So it is what it is. Each group's going to be different. But certainly in our world, yes, we're not sitting there. I don't wear crowns.
We hold ourselves to the
only
same
for pictures.
standards.
Just for pictures and special occasions. But it's situational. But in other words, I'm not trying to say we don't have discipline, but we're not extreme about it, I'd say, till we have to be.
What were we going to say, Ellie?
We hold ourselves to the same standards. High priesthood, we're all going to hold ourselves to basic priesthood standards and then more.
Yeah.
You should see that in all the priests, because we're all priests and priestesses. Fundamentally, every one of us in the circle, same starting power, same meaning. It's true. As witches.
I think there is a misconception publicly that titles make you pompous or whatever. In the
Not if you're well trained. It does the opposite.
And here's a huge thing that I really want to mention. To your question, Shelby. Here's something that is important to remember in this conversation that might help outsiders to remove some of their misconceptions about power and authority and all that. We don't get paid for this. We are forbidden in initiatory craft from taking money from students. Forbidden. If I found out that a high priest was doing that, I would publicly out that person as an abuser, right? I understand that that's not true in other traditions and ATRs and whatnot, but in our tradition, we are forbidden from charging for initiation and training. So I think a lot of outsiders don't know that.
No.
I don't think they know
Which is
that.
a really important, I think that's another rule put in place that keeps us pure.
Yeah.
You know. So
And we've spent more hours in this tradition doing this work, I think.
money does corrupt.
Than our
obviously.
regular job sometimes, because there's a lot of weeks we spent hours and hours reading,
Yeah, you have to do a lot.
memorizing,
You have
and
to,
doing.
I mean, you're in our. Here's something
Yeah.
which actually, I'm getting. This is a tangent to your question, Shelby, but it's something I was thinking about recently. Like, there are burdens to being high priesthood. Like, I have to have a house that can withstand a temple. I have to bring people into my home, right, where my husband lives, who's not an initiate, right? You know, like, this is a thing that impacts my life directly.
This studio that
And
we're
I-
filming in tonight, with all this equipment, in this room, in this part of this apartment that's our offices and headquarters, this is paid for and rented. Yes, this is not extra free
Our
stuff
students
hanging
don't
out.
do it. But we went off track. But that's an excellent question, Shelby. Thank you for calling.
Blessed be. Those are all amazing answers.
Blessed be. Thank you.
There's a couple in the chat.
The
that I
phone
want-
works.
I know. I always think you think that I've turned it off or something.
There are times when he tries to hide questions from me. He's admitted it.
So Ellie, how about we start with you? We'll pull one from the chat.
okay,
One of them was:
I'm
is
ready.
there a Coven Book of Shadows?
I might have. Okay, so there is a standard Book of Shadows that is canon and copied. Is there a Coven Book of Shadows? Can I answer that?
Yes.
Each coven is capable of creating their own secondary Book of Shadows with more material. It's possible, yes.
But we all share the original.
We all
So
share the
in
original.
Alexandrian craft, we have. So there is only one Book of Shadows, right?
Yes, yes.
And I think there's even initiates in certain lines that don't know this. So in some lines, they've added on a lot of materials. All that added on stuff isn't really the Book of Shadows.
Right.
It's been added on by that line. One of the things that we did differently, and I don't know why, is that Alexandrian craft always kept the first book isolated and unaltered. Whereas we have what we would now call sometimes a second book, which was born out of the Coven Book of Shadows.
Right.
So as time went on, people would leave and they would copy the Coven Book of Shadows to put it into their Coven Book of Shadows. And so some people call that the second book now, but it originally was born out of a coven. So we, in our coven, Ellie and I's, we have obviously the Book of Shadows, and then we have the second book, and then yes, we do have a grimoire for the coven. I'd prefer to say, because there's a, I think we should try to not use the verbiage Book of Shadows. So
'cause it is a
the
grimoire.
correct answer would be no. We do not have a Coven Book of Shadows. We have a Coven grimoire. There is the Book of Shadows.
Yeah.
But if we're going to use the modern verbiage of every book as a Book of Shadows, then yes.
Yeah,
That's a great description.
I wouldn't
of
add
them,
anything
how,
to that.
how we delineate those, though. For
I don't
sure.
know that we can add anything.
Yeah, I was going to say, Angel, I don't think you would add anything. I mean, there's really nothing to,
No, that's about it, guys.
It's like the Book of Shadows is a document
Yes.
that we have as Gardnerians and Alexandrians. And yeah.
And we can look at a Book of Shadows and know so many things about all kinds of things by reading the actual words.
Yeah,
Can't we?
I was thinking about this recently. I sometimes go back to it a lot just to
Yes.
like look at
Yes.
things and kind of like
Yes.
unknit what I think
Yes.
about it. And yeah,
I think it's one of the most important occult documents of our time.
I think it's had an enormous influence
Next
on
to Key of Solomon,
contemporary
these other
paganism,
things, absolutely.
contemporary witchcraft. Most people, and this is, I'm going to word this very carefully so that I don't break any oaths, but an enormous amount of people who make fun of Wicca on the internet are running rituals that could not exist without the work of Gerald Gardner.
Yeah.
like
Now,
the
there's-
entire structure of
I'll
it
go
is
a
Wicca.
stretch further. I don't think there's a person in our world, in Western world, I don't think there's a person in the Western world who isn't somehow their practice is influenced. I don't care if you're just lighting candles. Somehow your practice has been influenced by that man.
And by and religious
Yes.
witchcraft. Yeah, by the witchcraft revival.
Trickles down.
And he was influenced by all those other realms too, and they come
Absolutely.
back around
It's-
through him. But I mean, really relevant.
Well, just so
today.
everyone knows, I still have a working theory that Ellie Barnes may be the reincarnation of Gerald Gardner because it just sort of makes sense.
I
mean,
was
if we
born.
I don't mess up her hair because it looks so cute right now, but if we
Right.
pull it up,
Just need a white beard.
and she's equally as bizarre.
Listen to this though.
And would it not be hilarious if when we all died, we found out Gerald Gardner reincarnated into an Alexandrian.
He died in February.
Just for fun. He's just like, I'm not doing that guard
Let's
thing.
see if this is right. He died in February of 64. I think that's right, or right before then. And I was born in November of 64. So I think there was actually 9 months, pretty close, between his death and my birth.
Ellie is Gerald
I
Gardner.
always thought
is the
that,
takeaway,
and I had
guys.
that hair. But I love the anthropology mix too.
So here's a great question, and I want to. We'll get everybody in on this. Angel, the person who's asking the Book of Shadows, Jordan, also asked about joining a coven when you live far away, or what do you do when you're in a very small town and there are no covens?
Leave.
Move to the city where there's a coven and
You have to-
learn the tradition, and then you can take it somewhere else and grow it. It's got to be in person.
If you want to be an initiate of the line of succession, you have to go to where it is. However, I wrote a whole book called The Religion of Witchcraft, because you've got to sometimes make do with where you are. And if you are alone and there's no suitable groups, work the best you can on your own.
You can be devout.
If you get like-minded people to work with, you can do that. We certainly aren't opposed to it. And I think a lot of us probably did things like that at some point in time. And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, sincere is sincere, and I think the gods respond to that. So, I'm not encouraging the universe that everyone just starts an ad hoc coven, but I mean, do what you need to do. Do witchcraft, practice it, read. And then maybe someday you'll get in a situation where you do have a different opportunity. But if you really, really want it, just like if you wanted to go to medical school, you've got to go where the school is.
That's right.
That's how it works.
Would you add anything to that, Angel, about somebody living in a place with no coven?
Sorry, we have been shutting her out, haven't we?
It's okay. I do, because I do think that like your answer is it makes sense. If you want to go to a certain medical school, you have to go. But something about travel, it's a huge privilege, especially with the way the economy is right now. People don't really have the means to jump on a plane and move and leave their families. And as Allie mentioned earlier, some people are just waking up in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and they're like, am I a witch? So I would tell people there's so many books. There's this podcast that's an amazing resource, and try to find like-minded people. But you can't, a lot of people will try to skimp and save, and I've known people who have blown up their whole lives to try to go where witchcraft is, and it didn't work out because they weren't financially prepared for that burden.
As you speak, I'm literally thinking, I'm like, look, everybody who wants to go to Salem, you need to understand Massachusetts is not the South. It is one of the most expensive places in America.
Right.
So,
Extremely expensive.
yeah, Massachusetts is not a cheap place to live, guys.
And just to be fair to everyone, I don't think Salem requires any new witches. Stay home. Go somewhere else.
There's plenty.
Come visit
plenty of
us.
places
Come
to
visit.
Crawling
spread.
with it. It's crawling.
We don't need
Witches.
more. We got plenty of our own witches now. However, New Orleans has room for more witches.
Oh yeah.
And we're way more fun. No offense.
Hey, can I
No
just say
offense,
this?
Angel.
Download from the universe for witches listening. Group in your city or town, wherever you find yourself, reach out online and find your fellow witches and say, if we all give 10%, we can open a small shop and sell things and do readings and do healings. I think that can really be done in any town if you find 10 people to work together. So
Wow,
reach out and
Ellie's
do
a
that.
communist.
I know, I love that.
Good for her.
Even
You know
just
what?
a healing center.
What do
with
they
some-
call that when people do that? That was a big thing for a while. They call it.
Crowdsourcing.
No, it's they had a word for it where they're all
Co-op,
coming
like when
in.
you-
Co-op.
Co-ops, yeah, co-ops.
I'm a big
yeah.
member. I'm a fan of co-ops. I think where one person can't get it all done, 10 people can for just 10% of your income.
So there was one at the very beginning that I'm actually going to ask, because we did talk about magical practice, and so I think it's a valid question. And Angel, since we did cut you out of a couple of those, I want to start with you.
Angel goes first. Okay.
Somebody thinks about asking about getting the evil eye off of you or uncrossing. Obviously, we're not going to give away Alexandrian or Gardnerian practices on the show, but what is a personal practice, Angel, you use for cleansing or hex reversal?
Ancient Chinese
So I'm
secret.
probably an odd man out with this, but I believe that curses only work if you think you deserve them. But if you really want to go, you could use sage, you could use Palo Santo, take a hot shower with some Epsom salts. But my personal belief is if someone's putting a curse on you, it'll only work if you think you deserve it. So
Christian guilt. Wow, I kind of love that. It's an interesting answer. Ellie, what about you? What's your quick go-to thing?
You've been bad girl, Ellie. You deserve curse. What should you do?
Let's not do the exits.
I I thought that was
My
baby
spirit guide.
talk.
I can get away with it. My spirit guide's got multiple accents. His southern one is my favorite one when he says, "Hey, y'all, watch this." Like I love that. Okay, so draw a circle in white chalk or eggshell on your front door and back door, and then put your doormat over it. Yeah, that's my answer.
Brian, do you have a quick kibble that you like to do?
I have various practices. I think if you're to make it very simple, if you're good with God, if you're good with her, I don't think you have to worry about anything like that. However, I do, as an occultist, look at the exchange of energy and power, whether it's through germs or whether it's through people accidentally throwing their bad vibes on you. I think it's important to keep clean, and so I have various sort of disciplines and things like I do, but I don't obsess over it. I'm sure there's been thousands of curses thrown at me and my husband, and we seem to be doing pretty okay. So I think as long as you just get good with Jesus, just get good with her,
Baby
the goddess.
Jesus.
I think if you're
Baby
good
Jesus.
with the divine, because I definitely believe magic is a religious experience. So I think that the only way a curse is going to work on you is if the gods are thinking that you're deserving of
you
it.
deserve it.
So if the gods don't think you deserve it, it's probably not going to work.
Right.
I
love that answer.
I don't think that I have. I think I'm closer to Angel on this. I don't really have a huge belief in that kind of literal thaumaturgic birthday wish kind of magic, and I know that really offends a lot of people in this community. One of the worst fights I ever got into.
He doesn't believe in it because if it worked, a lot of people would be dead.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I think, and there's just too many successful people in the world with too many enemies who die happy in their bed at 90 with $1 billion in the bank. I mean, and they're being cursed constantly, and I don't think they're all doing magic to protect themselves, right? They're more like what Angel's saying. They don't believe in it. They don't care. The billionaire tech hedge fund manager doesn't give a shit about your little practice.
Or we could be woo, and fate just doesn't have that in mind for them.
Yeah. I think one of the things you can do, I think, is get it out of your own head through purification rituals. I do actually think that saltwater baths and smoking the house out with frankincense, for example. And if you are really, really believing that you are, I think look into some of the more modern occult rituals, like the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, the rose cross rite, all of those things that come from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. They invoke angels, they invoke protective spirits.
Don't pay someone to remove it.
No.
That's the classic con.
No.
Yeah.
And I know that there is
because they're just conning you for money.
This is a huge debate right now in the magical community online. Massive. It's one of the most rancorous debates. It's about hex work and curse work and removals and jinxes and money. It's like one of the most contentious debates. I am pretty much on the side of anybody who's telling you that if you give them $1,000, they'll fix your life as a con artist.
But they are.
Yeah, totally. And I love the idea of just elevating your own energy to the strata higher up. Don't dwell in that realm of cursing and who said,
I
said.
think it's
right,
the most dangerous thing is if you obsess on it.
Yeah, don't do it. Just go above and do great
it's no
work.
different. Okay, let's use New Orleans, because I like to talk about magic also just in that practical sense. So if I'm walking down a street through New Orleans, preferably I'm not going to do that at night. That's a choice, But if I am, I'm going to be very aware of my surroundings, But I'm not going to exist with extreme paranoia about it. I'm just going to be aware. Yeah. So same idea. If somebody knocks at my door or rings my bell in New Orleans and I don't know who's there, I don't open the door. It doesn't mean I freak out every time it happens and think it's a murderer. It's a best practice. I don't know who you are or why you're ringing my bell. I'm not going to answer the door.
Candygram, land shark.
Yeah.
That's old Saturday Night Live.
What's a land shark?
But I think it's dependent also on where you're
Somebody's
at.
named a Wicca lady. Is that real?
I kind of love
Wicca
it.
lady.
I need to talk to
Okay,
you
what's
about
our
Wicca.
next question? I like that question though, and I think our answers are really getting good.
I thought it was an interesting thing to talk about too, as our own approach to sort of that idea. And we all gave similar, starting with Angel. I mean, Angel, you were kind of on, you and I were very similar. I think a lot of us have a low opinion of, how do I word this without getting in trouble on the internet? I think we all have a,
You're not on
correct
there
me if I'm
anyway,
wrong,
no.
any of us.
Yeah.
I think once you've been in an initiatory system for a long time, you do sort of lose connection a little bit with those kind of practices. They just become less important, I guess, maybe. Like, I don't sit around and think about this at all. Like, I mean, do you all sit around and think about hexing and cursing?
No.
No, never.
I'm busy magically with
not
a lot
occasionally.
of healings and helpings
I mean,
and solutions and
It's a part
cool
of the training.
answers.
Yeah, of course.
We train people how to protect themselves, and we train some people how to curse, not for any way that you might find on the internet, but it's about knowing how to deal with it. It does occur, it does exist, and obviously we can debate about whether that's psychological, whether it's divine intervention, whether it's sheer will or power. Bad things do happen to people, and sometimes in strange and unexpected ways. So I think it's wise to realize that no one's Superman, in any given situation. But regardless of how you think about it, I think that the advice that Angel's giving or that you are giving is healthy, because the last thing you want to do is be paranoid about it. It'd be like being in a relationship with someone and you constantly think they're stepping out on you. Even if they're not, it's going to harm the relationship.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it's paranoia.
Yeah, so if you think you're being cursed all the time, you're probably kind of cursing yourself.
Yes.
Oh my God. People will talk themselves into it.
Yeah.
I also wanted to add, because I love what you're saying, I think there is something that needs to be said about a lot of the current community of hexing, cursing, banishing, uncrossing, blah, blah, blah. Some of it is...
Most of it's money motivated.
It's money motivated. Yeah. But I also think there's a second thing that needs to happen is, it's the great excuse, isn't it? And that's what I don't like. Yeah. It's the great excuse.
Victim.
My life's only bad because someone's working on me.
Yeah, I actually had a lot of clients, and they would not be repeat clients of me. I always was very kind. I was never rude. I think my entire time being a reader, I had one bad review once. I had good reviews, but
and they didn't know. All they had to do was bury this button at a crossroads.
But
and instead they paid $1,000. $1,000
to somebody. And first of all, two things really quick. This happens more than you think. If you think it's rare that people spend a lot of money to pay these practitioners, you're wrong. It's very common.
There's people that support themselves.
That's how they make their money, right? Yeah. Two, the second thing I'm going to say. A lot of the times, the reason it would be an uncomfortable reading is because they would say, "This man, my partner is leaving me because we're hexed," and the more they would talk, it would be, "No, your partner's leaving you because you're a leech." Like, because you haven't done any emotional work on yourself. You're a horrible partner. I would have people who
sharing the bills.
You would have people who are like, "I'm hexed. My partner's leaving me. She wants a divorce." And then you'd talk to them, and they didn't have a job, wouldn't go to work, smoked weed all day, had a horrible porn addiction, like that, and did nothing. And they'd be like, "Look how cursed I am."
Some of them turn into Catholics.
A horrible porn addiction on top of all that.
But like, in all honesty, like, you don't. That's dangerous to me. Or like, people would be like, "I can't get a job. I'm cursed." Well, how many interviews have you went on? Or are you trying
20?
out for things you're qualified for? Well, no. Oh, well, that's not a curse. And I'm not saying the person who asked this question did this. It's just something I think is super important to keep in mind, is that sometimes when you think it's all black magic, it's just a beautiful little excuse, isn't it? To take no responsibility over your life.
Victim and expectation that, that things are negative around you. It's not your fault. But I really, in the cases like 1 out of 100, how many out of 100 might have a real curse, magical thing going on? Like 1%, less than 1%?
I don't know, but it's not
It's small.
It's small.
I mean, nowadays, I suppose with the way that the internet is, there's probably people doing curses all over the place.
Yeah.
They're just not going to work because they're not actually effective.
And you
magic.
have to keep doing them. That's what I say every week. They're not a one-time deal. I just still think elevate to the next level of vibration, and you're not going to have to worry about negative black magic or cursing.
I have often taught that the greatest curse that you could ever give to anyone is to remove your light from their world. I love this saying, I never get this right, but it's in one of Patricia Crowther's books, and it's something about the sage beneath the peepal tree. And it says, this person goes to the sage beneath the peepal tree and says, "I want you to curse this man. I want you to have his dogs get fleas. I want to have his wife leave him, for his crops to fail, for him to go bald, for him to get sick," and all spouts all the things. And the sage beneath the peepal tree said, "Why don't you just wish him an ordinary life?"
Yeah.
Ooh, burn.
There's a slam poet who got really popular and went viral who has a poem like that one time where she says, "I wish you a beige life."
Ooh, beige.
Yeah, she's
Hey,
like,
crew.
"I wish you a beige
My
life."
favorite curse is I hope your Uber driver talks to you.
The whole time.
The whole time.
I don't know who came
About
up with that,
Jesus.
but I love it.
I hope they talk to you the whole time about how much they love Jesus.
Some curses can be fun.
I actually heard a wonderful curse from my favorite high priest, no names, who told me the best curse you can ever give someone is taking away your light. Just you're no longer in my life.
And it's also like,
My light is gone from you.
it's just,
I
guys,
no longer shine upon you.
I no longer
I
shine
don't
upon
know.
you.
I really know. I know that this is super contentious, and there are people who think that this is horrible of me to say, but it really is about money. I don't know how to like.
Is. Well, that's one of the rules that, for people who want to, poo-poo on the craft rules and things like that, it's one of the rules that we don't accept money, and it really keeps it from being corrupted in that way.
My students don't give me a dime.
No.
And never will. And
No, we're not saying that there aren't, there are things you can do for money magically that I don't find, untoward.
Sure, divination.
Creating an object for someone, you're charging them for the object you created. Divination, time. Even, no, I wouldn't do any of these things. Certain amounts of healing, things like if you were actually doing like a therapeutic thing that's involving a table and your time and, massage or, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Something
sure.
that's got
Or even
effort
Reiki
into it.
masters, energy healers. That's
I
legitimate.
wouldn't do any of these things. I would never work magic for someone and ever exchange a coin. That's me personally. But some people do it in ways that I find to be ethical, because they're actually contributing something. But when you're talking about somebody who's just working off the paranoia and feeding off of a community of people who are desperate for love, desperate for money, desperate to live, or constantly think there's curses on them, there are people out there who will go to someone who has cancer and say they have cancer because they've been cursed. And they'll remove the curse for $10,000, and then the cancer is probably going to go away. And of course it doesn't, does it? Because it's not real, but the person gets their $10,000. And so there's just, I find that stuff to be evil.
There's a huge debate going on in the magical community that has been going on for a long time, that the argument is that this is a colonialist mindset, or it sets up a situation where only rich people can be witches or whatever because we don't charge.
I want you to all examine the countries that were never colonized.
But I think here's my takeaway from it. First of all, I think there's a lot of like very uncomfortable conversations, in my opinion, that go on around this by white people who want to speak for people of color in these communities, and I think that's really revolting. There are a lot, for example, just to pull this out of my, out of history, a lot of very educated, incredible people of color who were like socialists and progressives and really were trying to break free from the influence of Christianity, also didn't like folk religion because of its influence when it came to money. So these, you cannot speak about a group of people, whether it's, American practitioners of voodoo or hoodoo or witchcraft or any particular tradition. These are not monoliths. You cannot speak about entire groups of people as if they all think alike or act alike. It's just a very dangerous game that people play online. And a lot of white practitioners go in thinking that they're doing well, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think sometimes they can overstep in these conversations about curse work and money.
First of all, white privileged people, our people, overstep about every subculture.
Yes, it's like they just do.
They do it with gays. They do it with trans people. They do it with African Americans. They do, because they shouldn't be the voice for those things, but they are always the ones screaming the loudest about how everyone isn't respecting them. Is it not true?
They do it with interior designers.
Interior designers. What an oppressed group, Angel.
The gays don't like it when you say that.
Will we ever be able to save interior design? Not if we don't get rid of minimalism.
Never, ever.
Your questions were largely...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I
Ellie,
just
please.
wanted to give it like a personal opinion about my statement about like how we earn money in certain occult ways. I definitely am a good psychic, so I don't mind charging money at all for just doing raw psychic work for my clients, business, personal
That's also
life,
taking
goals they're working
time.
on. It's time, and it's an ability, and I just deliver it, in a straight up flat platform. I just tell them what I see, answer their questions, and go forward. I don't make judgments. That doesn't bother me. Teaching witchcraft or doing magic for people, I do healings for free and protection for free for a very few people that are really moved me, that I need to do something for them. I'm happy
Well,
to do
that's
it.
the interesting thing. I mean, we don't want to become a Make-A-Wish Foundation.
No.
But the truth of the matter is, if you really have a magical need and you go to a proper coven and they believe you, they will work for you for free.
That's and I don't
The
mind
group
that.
will work for you for free. There are places that actually do that for free. Healing for free.
Yeah, I do it personally and
removing
protection.
your curse for free. Obviously, we're not going to do it if we don't think it's real, or we don't, we're probably not going to work so that Fred comes back.
No, but I do want to say, I think that's some nice, and teaching certain techniques or histories or, developmental work with your psychic ability or your herbal work. Yeah, if I know that stuff really strongly and I'm teaching people for money, that's okay with me too, because it's still my time. But I think the magic, the specialty magic, either do it. There are people that do specialty magic for money, and they do spend their time and their intellect, and you'll still test their validity and their success. But then I think great witches, also sincere magicians, do some just work in their community for free because they believe in the people that
I
need
keep
it.
seeing all these people saying things about dogs, and I'm not quite sure what this
My
is.
favorite, though,
Dogs
is
will
somebody
do
who's an
dog
interior
magic.
designer in the comments said it's not minimalism that's killing us, it's farmhouse. And it's so true.
I love that.
That shabby chic
and
farmhouse
you know what?
aesthetic
And I
is
said, I bought
awful.
that when I bought my house here. I said, oh, it's French, 1885. We're going to have to do French country. And everyone went, boo.
I love that.
I still failed. I have a lot of bookshelves, but it's primitive. Okay. I love that question. But don't call me
think
for
we have
free
time for
magic.
one more
Don't
question.
call me for free magic. I
Yes.
don't have time for that.
I think, do you have a particular one that you'd like to end on?
I can't see any of them.
Does anybody, while I'm looking for a final one, Ellie or Angel, do you have a question that you would like to end on?
Ooh, I want to think about Angel's really nice lineage of like magic. Okay, no, I have a great final idea. Each of us could we tell in terms of what we're really interested in magically, just for the sake of magic, performing magic
Are we
work.
doing let's all
No.
share in a circle?
Yes, I want to
thing
see what
again?
you're all thinking
She
about
said yes,
doing.
Brian.
I hate this so
No,
much.
we're starting with Angel. Just as creative magic, whether it's folky or herbal or
I've been
coven
trying to
or.
beat this out of her for years.
I love this idea.
Let's all share.
Brian.
Good idea.
This is the final.
This is
thing.
what
This is
people
my
do
question.
when they don't know what to do.
No, Angel.
So
What
you
magic
want
are
to
you
know
looking-
my creative magic, like
Yeah.
personal?
that you're doing, that you're thinking about right now, that
Like right
you're
currently in your
incorporating.
life,
Yeah,
right, Ellen?
currently in your life.
Sure.
Currently in my life, magically, I'm working on just stability and mental health. No.
Wow.
Work harder.
Dang it.
Well,
I love
look
you.
at my
I'm
family.
teasing. I'm teasing.
Like what techniques are you using though? Like mental, using a planet?
I use a lot of herbology. I use a lot of astrology. I'm really looking into like houses and planets right now. I'm really also loving sigils for some reason. That's like my go-to. I cross-stitched a sigil a few weeks ago
I
for
love
some reason.
sigils. I
So
love sigils. Okay, all right,
you,
Levi.
Ellie?
Levi.
Oh, you want me to
Okay,
go?
okay, yeah, you go. I'll go next, and Brian will go last. Okay, Levi's next. What are you doing in magic right now?
I'm doing a lot of sort of like guided meditation and astral visualization. So like trying to really connect to a god or a goddess, really do a lot of work to think about that, and then allowing myself to have states of consciousness that are slightly shifted to be able to experience that
Are you
in
wearing a
reality.
little makeup?
No.
Okay, it must be my eyes.
Not J.D. Vance. No,
Have you seen that amazing TikToker who makes
I
fun of
don't
him by
know.
pretending
I don't know,
to be
but I've seen. Oh
JD
my God.
Vance doing stand-up where he's like, have you all ever had a job not work out? You know what I'm talking about? And it's just nonsense. So good. Look it up.
I love it. No,
I
think
hate
the
his
whole,
guts.
the whole politics things. Yeah, no. Oh gosh, I have so much to say about politics too, but I'm not. Okay, magic today. Interestingly, I have a lot of big needs I'm working on, mostly financial and like investment stability, et cetera. And so in light of, kind of a wonky economy. So instead of doing magic right now, I decided to collect information and be very perceptive and really watch big picture what was happening around me so that when I did do magic, it was very accurate and powerful. So I'm taking a hiatus from magical action and working on collecting information.
Backbone before wish.
Why does it
Yes.
sound so nefarious?
Yes, it is.
I'm
Hilarious.
collecting
I have to win. I have to
information.
win.
I've become that elder millennial that only references memes. There's an amazing where this lady's singing about Jesus.
It's cute that you think you're a millennial.
And I am a millennial. No, like dead center. What do you think I am?
I don't know, a boomer.
I also think that I'm going to say something real quick. Brian thinks I have been old since kindergarten. I was in front of the Cubbies with a Pall Mall cigarette complaining about being there. so I've always been old. My favorite candy is black licorice. Like I'm sitting over reading my books complaining about the youth. So if you think you can hurt my feelings by making me feel old, girl, I've been old since kindergarten.
I don't think you have.
I love you because I always said to the people at the schools, I was like, could you have my new teacher read out loud? I'll listen. And then I was like, no, not good enough. I need another listen to another teacher.
I've always been old.
Right? It's horrible because I was like, they can't read better than I can, and I'm
Do you have
7.
any interest in a current occult thing right now, Brian?
Yeah. Magic. What are you doing for magic?
Absolutely have to know there's no way I'm going to tell any of you or the general public what I'm
Oh,
working on
dang
magically.
it.
There's just no way. So my answer is it's none of your business. I'm very tight-lipped. I think that people should be very secretive about what they're doing and their comings and goings. But I am going to say that next week's ambush interview will be conducted by Melissa Mayhem. She's in the chat there.
Oh, yay.
She is a traditional witch who has been, I'm not sure if I've got it all right, but she's been in the OTO. She's been a Gardnerian. She's a part of New York Wicca. I thought she was in the Welsh tradition, but I might have got confused there. So she's a traditional witch from Salem, Massachusetts. She's been extremely exposed to a lot of occult and magical things. So she's going to be conducting our interview.
I went to her
next week.
class at Hexfest, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I want to say something
excellent.
about her too at Hexfest. Melissa and I were on the same panel at the end of the night, and the questions we all answered in different rows. And I kept looking at her, and she looked at me, and we were like, "Yes, we think the same thing. We're saying the same thing." We didn't get to visit each other at all at Hexfest, but I knew. I was like, I think we're syncing up as two women magicians, and I'll get to talk to her more and pay attention to what she's doing. So it turns out we will. I love
So
that.
yes, that's going to be very exciting because she's quite knowledgeable, and so I can't wait to see what
Happy.
She's trying to pack up her house and move, and,
I know, she's
and
gonna-
come up with this topic as well. So we'll be looking forward to that next week, and I'll
Yes.
be working on booking our next guest.
And let's give us a huge shout out to our host and questionnaire today, Angel. It was phenomenal. Blessed be. I loved
Blessed
those
be.
questions. You've sparked so many deep conversations and tangents
Really
today.
good stuff.
So
Really
Angel
good stuff.
Bless you, thank you.
was on last season, but she was just saving us because our guest bowed out last minute due to social pressures, I'm sure. And so
But she read
he
the
gave
question.
Angel the questions, and Angel did them. I said, Angel, I'll have you on for real next season. So thank you.
They were great
No,
questions.
really great questions. And we'll definitely
No,
keep
thank
talking.
you guys. I had a good time.
Absolutely. It was
Blessed
a
be.
pleasure.
Everyone, happy decadence, and we will
Blessed be.
see you next Sunday for church.
Yes,
Dancing
we will.
in the street.
May the
Brian
Dark Lord
Kane,
watch over all of
dancing
you.
in the street. Blessings.
Bye.